Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and it is Tag Tuesday again. And today I have the This or That People April tag. So, Roz at Scally Dandling Around the Books and Book Hands and Books have created a tag to go along with People April. And People April is a readathon that is all about reading about the lives of real people, whether by biography or memoir or letters, diaries, etc. Which I love because I love memoirs and letters and journals, that sort of thing. Biographies kind of depends on the biography and the person, but I really enjoy reading about real people. And so I am going to do the This or That tag today. So there are 10 questions of this or that types of biographies or memoirs, etc. So as you can see, I am once again outside. The weather has just been absolutely gorgeous in the past couple of days here in Virginia. And today, I believe it got up into the 80s and nice sky that is largely sunny with some clouds. We're now in the evening, but it's still very lovely out here, very mild, just perfect temperature. And I want to film out here in this little reading nook that I have in my backyard as much as I can until the bugs come, because the bugs will come. And I don't know why it all of a sudden got so dark. So apologies if the lighting is horrible. Before the bugs come. And I mean, we already have the gnats, but those, whatever. If you see me going like this, that's why. It's the mosquitoes and those little no-see-ums or whatever you want to call them that bite, the biting bugs. We live at the bottom of a hill and there's a creek back there, and not a good scenario. Creates standing water, especially if we have a lot of rain, and it creates like a really moist situation back there, which attracts mosquitoes. So our yard is not a very pleasant place. Basically, I don't know, May to October, probably. Lots of mosquitoes. There's like a short window of time in the morning before they come out for the day, and then I don't go outside. So yeah, that's the reality of life at my house. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the tag. Let's do the tag. So first of all, question number 1. Do you prefer big, fat, detailed biographies or short and succinct? And I guess either would be my answer, because I have read both and I've enjoyed both. I guess it kind of depends on the person and how much there is to say about their life. I probably prefer big, fat, and detailed over short and succinct. If I'm reading a biography, it's because I really want to know about the person. And so the more in-depth the biography goes, the more I enjoyed it. My favorite was about the Brontes, and I forget the name of the author. And I read it digitally, so I don't know how many pages the actual physical copy is, but I think it's up there. On the Kindle, it was like 1,000 pages or something, or 1,200 pages, something like that. It was quite long. And it was all about the Bronte families, but I enjoyed it. One of my favorite biographies ever. So I don't mind a good, detailed, lengthy, chunky biography at all. Number 2, celebrity memoirs or average Joe? Well, if you mean like a current celebrity, no. I can't keep it. I don't keep track of current celebrities. I mean, I'm honestly just not really interested. I don't watch a lot of movies or a lot of TV, or I don't listen to a lot of pop culture music, so I don't even know, like, beyond the most obvious, I don't know who a lot of the popular performers are right now. So yeah, I guess I don't really have interest in celebrity memoirs. Even ones from past eras, I don't particularly. There are some that intrigue me, or the stories of their life are so either interesting or kind of tragic that makes me curious to read their biographies. But generally speaking, I would say no to celebrities. On the other hand, by average Joe, do you just mean like the guy next door? Everybody has a story, and many people's stories are interesting, but I mean, I don't know that I would just pick up a memoir about an average Joe unless he had something important to say or discuss. So, like, I read one once that was interesting and it stuck with me, about a girl who was abused by her family, but in particular, there was a whole Munchausen by proxy situation going on with her mother. And that is something that interests me and fascinates me. And so nobody has heard of that girl, or her life story. And I just came across that book. I think it may have even been self-published. I'm not sure. And I found it incredibly fascinating, terribly sad, but fascinating and interesting. And because I just wanted to understand, like, how can this happen? How can this sort of thing actually happen with people? And so I found it interesting. So I guess it depends. Like, if there's an interesting angle or aspect to their life, it doesn't matter if they're famous or not to me. But I don't specifically reach for celebrity memoirs, if that makes sense. And number 3, complete correspondence or selected letters. Selected, let's go with selected, because if you read complete letters, I imagine that could get incredibly boring very fast. Except for in cases where, like, for example, Jane Austen, her sister burned a lot of her letters. So there wasn't, her whole library of letters to read. What's left is still quite a lot, but they're all interesting enough that you really get a feel for Jane Austen. But by and large, I think probably selections is better, especially if you're talking about people from the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century who wrote a lot of letters. Probably selected would be better. Number 4, memoirs written when the events are fresh or memoirs written with hindsight. I think a little bit of distance from the events is better, because then, generally speaking, a little bit of distance creates clearer hindsight and a better ability to actually share the story more accurately, theoretically. I'm not sure that always works out that way, but that would be my thought. So I would say give it a little time before you write that memoir. Number 5, gossipy biographies or scholarly. I'm going to say scholarly. I don't really reach for gossipy biographies. And I feel like gossipy biographies are usually about celebrities. And I already said, I don't really read celebrity memoirs or biographies. I really prefer it to be factual and historical. Now, I don't mind if it's written as a novel, for example. Like, I will read biographical novels that are based on a historic person, but kind of fleshes out the story of their life and tells it in a story format. But I don't consider that gossipy. And when you read that, you know that, the conversations that are taking place in this book and some of the incidents that happen are not factual. They're just creating a story arc of this person's life and helping it to flow and create an interesting story about them. So there's like a blend of fact and fiction there. That I don't mind. But if it's gossipy and it's not, it doesn't have sources to back up what's being said, I prefer not to read that. I'd rather just read a work of fiction about the person where I know it's fictional, at least in part. So yeah, no to the gossipy. Number 6, diaries of ordinary life or extraordinary events. Well, this is tricky because if you're talking like just regular old ordinary life, waking up and gardening and doing the dishes and taking our kids to school and doing your job, whatever that is, and then coming home and cleaning the house and making dinner and then going to bed and starting all over again the next day, that would not be interesting at all. So I would think I would read a diary of either an extraordinary person, like a president or a prominent historical person, like an author or a composer or something like that. Or I would read about the diary of someone who lived through extraordinary events, like Anne Frank, for example. Or I have read the diaries of Fanny Burney, which I've mentioned a few times on this channel, who was an author, but she also knew extraordinary people herself. So she was a published author, so that was a little extraordinary in and of itself, especially in that time. And her books have survived the passage of time. So she's already has a little bit of extraordinary status. But on top of that, like, she hobnobbed with kings and queens and other members of the nobility and other extraordinary people. So that was interesting. And she lived through extraordinary times. She lived through the French Revolution, and she was married to a French man during that time, and she was English, so that created an interesting dynamic. I also read the memoirs or diaries rather, of an artist, a female artist, who traveled all around Europe. She escaped the French Revolution and traveled all around Europe. So both of those would be both extraordinary people, but also that they lived through extraordinary times and extraordinary events. So that made it interesting. I probably wouldn't just read a ho-hum diary of an average person who just lived an average life and didn't live through anything extraordinary or do anything extraordinary. I mean, everybody has a story, like I said. And if I met a person in person, I would want to know their story. But as far as what I choose to read, no. Now, caveat here. In my family, we do have a memoir written by my grandfather. And there is nothing extraordinary about his life. There are some mildly extraordinary elements about his father's life, my great-grandfather. But it's not anything that makes for gripping reading material or anything. But the memoir that he wrote about his experience as a child and his dad and etc. is interesting. But it's interesting to me because they're my family and they are my heritage and they are people that I knew and loved. So that interests me. But would it interest the world at large? Probably not as much. I mean, it's well written. He did a great job. It's interesting, but there's not a lot in the subject matter. There's not like a lot that happens. So, yeah. Number 7, Arty Memoirs. Arty sounded funny. Arty Memoirs or Sporting. And unless it's about a figure skater, I'm going to go with Arty. Arty. That doesn't sound right either. Artsy? Don't think that means quite the same thing. Anyway, I would rather read a memoir by or about an artist, because I have done that more than once. Or, for example, an author or a musician of some kind. I have done all of the above. Than a memoir of an athlete, which I have only done a couple of times, and both of them were figure skaters. I don't believe I have ever read any other sports memoirs. Number 8, gritty, autobiographical, or inspirational. Well, hopefully this is not cheating, but I'm going to kind of turn this question on its edge, and I'm going to say that a gritty autobiography is inspirational. That's my answer. Because gritty to me means someone who lived through something really difficult. And if they lived to write about it, then that means even though they went through something terrible, they have something of a success story to tell about what happened to them. So I'm going to go with gritty because that is inspirational. If it's just like a rah, you can succeed in life sort of thing that doesn't have a lot of struggle to overcome, then it's not very meaningful. So I think a little grit is required in order for there to be inspiration, if that makes sense. Number 9, biographies of historical figures or biographies of contemporary figures. I'm going to go with historical. I guess I'm much more interested, generally speaking, in the past than I am in the present, except for my own present life. I'm very much invested in and involved in my own personal life in the present. But as far as the world at large goes, I have much more interest in knowing about the past than I do about the present. And I also feel like biographies and etc. written about historical characters or figures have a tendency to be much more accurate than a person who is still alive and well, because I think there is more of a danger of bias happening there. So I think that historical biographies or biographies of historical figures I would prefer. And I'll give you two examples. So they're both about historical characters, but they were written by contemporaries. So Charlotte Bronte's biography was written by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I recently finished Louisa May Alcott's Life, Letters, and Journals by Edna Chaney. Edna Chaney was a contemporary of Louisa May Alcott, and Elizabeth Gaskell was a contemporary of Charlotte Bronte. And they wrote their respective biographies not too many years after the subject, passed away. And both of them have a distinct amount of bias. And it colors what is said, it colors what information is shared. So I think that it's much better to have a little time and distance removed to where the people writing the biographies do not personally know and don't have a personal connection to the subject of the biography. Number 10, memoirs of happy days or tragic days. I'm good with either one. It's not as interesting if there's nothing bad that happens, right? Because that's a good story always has a problem that has to be overcome. So, and that's true in any story. Like, the whole point of a story is a problem and the solution most of the time. A story that is just about things that pleasantly go along as they should is not very interesting. It doesn't capture your attention quite as well. So there has to be some sort of conflict or problem or issue, but it doesn't necessarily have to be tragic. So, and I guess if the person in question never really had anything tragic happen to them, it still would be interesting. But as long as there's some kind of struggle or difficulty that's being overcome in the course of the story, I think that's required for a good story. So that is the this or that tag for People April. And let's see. I didn't think before I started filming about who to tag for this. So give me a second. Okay, thinking is done. I am going to tag Dia at Novel Idea and Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia, because I know both of them have read biographies and memoirs, etc. And so they may find this tag interesting. No pressure. Okay, what is wrong with that ant? Go away. Goodbye. Okay, anyways, so feel free to ignore the tag. And anyone out there in the booktube world, if you are interested in this tag, go for it. I look forward to seeing your answers, or if you just want to leave some of your thoughts in the comments about which of these things you would choose in reading biographies, memoirs, etc., or if you even enjoy reading biographies and memoirs. I have to say, it is a bit of a developed taste, at least it was for me. When I was younger, I did not enjoy biographies or memoirs at all, and I would have thought it was incredibly boring to read someone's letters or diaries. But now, as an adult, I actually find it very interesting if I'm interested in the person. So I really enjoy reading all of the above. Biographies, memoirs, letters, journals, all of it. I find it very interesting. So there you go. I hope you all have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.